What happens when you don't just launch a business, you buy one and inherit the podcast, the audience, and the brand voice that comes with it? Today's guest is Jen Fizer, CEO of MKB CFO and host of the Financial Operator podcast. About a year ago, Jen acquired a CFO firm and its existing show and stepped into the role of owner, operator, and behind the mic host, all while rebranding and reshaping the business to fit her vision and her personality. In this episode, we go behind the scenes of a real acquisition, a podcast takeover, a rebrand, and what it actually looks like to transition from new owner to trusted voice without pretending that the process is polished in any way. You're listening to Podcasting for Financial Professionals, the show where smart business owners learn how to use podcasting as a serious growth tool, not just another marketing experiment. I'm Virginia Elder, podcast strategist and founder of Podcast Abundance. Since 2019, I've helped professionals stop guessing with their podcast and instead build a show that increases their authority, expands reach, and generates leads for their business. If you've ever wondered whether your podcast is actually generating leads or if you're just kind of publishing episodes and hoping for the best, you're not alone. And the issue usually isn't the content. It's that no one ever showed you what to track. Your podcast builds authority, warms leads, expands your reach, and creates opportunities long before someone ever hires you. But if you're only watching download numbers, you're missing most of the ROI. That's why I created the Podcast ROI Metrics Tracker, a free tool that helps you track 50 plus non-traditional metrics so you can finally see what your podcast is really doing for your business. Grab it now at podcastabundance.com/ROI-tracker. All right, let's get into the episode. Jen, thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Just give us a brief overview of your business, what you do, how you help folks, and who you are.
I am Jen. I am the owner of MKB CFO and Bookkeeping. So as the name says, we are a fractional CFO and bookkeeping firm. I purchased the business about a year ago, just shy of a year ago. And I had been working with them previously for about a year before I did that. And I've been in the CFO space for probably 12 years, just working with small businesses, helping them keep more of their money, make more money, whatever it is that their goal is. That's kind of what I like to help them do, right? Like make it possible. So I always say that my role is not to tell them no, unless it's like a really terrible idea. But if it's just something that they want to do, like let's make it happen.
Something that caught my eye on the website was that it said helping blue collar businesses. So share a little bit more about your ideal client and how their needs of a CFO might look differently than, I don't know, white collar company. I don't know.
I would say that about 50% of our clients are in blue collar fields like home services, trades, construction, things like that. And really the reason that we got into that was because generally what happens is like one person goes out on their own, right? They've been a plumber for years and they go out on their own and they will be doing just fine. They might grow to, I don't know, 600,000-700,000 and they can do that by themselves. And then they think, okay, I need to grow. I want to add another plumber or more trucks. I need some admin help, whatever it may be. And that's when they start to get into trouble because it's like you think that the more people you have, the more money coming in, that means that you're more profitable. And usually that growth period is really tough because it's just expensive to grow. And if they're not prepared for that, that could be the time where they lose their business or they end up having to like descale from wherever they were at and kind of go back to that one-man show. So that's where we step in. We can offer a lot of that foresight and proactive financial guidance to help them in that CFO space. That's, like I said, 50% of our clients. Probably we do help others as well, because a lot of times the knowledge is applicable to whatever business you may have. But and then on the bookkeeping side, we actually started as just a CFO firm. And what we were finding is that the books were not updated ever.
You mean plumbers don't keep good
I
books?
know, it was
What?
crazy.
Not to, no
Yeah.
shade to the plumbers out there, but like it's just not your expertise if you're a
Well, I will,
tradesman.
as somebody that does books, like it's not fun, right? Like I mean, every once in a while, I kind of think it's fun going in and like fixing the puzzle, but I fully understand why people don't like to do it because there's like, it gets frustrating.
Well, and it's mundane too. It's like I did that transaction like a month ago. I'm over it.
Yes. And a lot of times it's like, well, I'll just check my bank account. If my bank account has money in it, then we're probably doing okay. If it doesn't, then I need to go sell. Like that's the marker that they're using for whether they're profitable or not. And then what happens is you get to the end of the year and you pull a P&L and it's like, oh crap. Either you made way more money than you think you did and suddenly you have to pay taxes on that, or you made no money and you were just like, what was the point of all of this? So keeping your books updated, that helps me as the CFO give you good advice and not just guessing based on what we vibes. We're not living on vibes here. So that's really how those two pieces kind of came together. And a lot of times too, even, and I'm not speaking badly of like bookkeeping firms or CPAs or anything like that, but we would find that like a CPA firm, if they were hired to do the books, sometimes they would just do them like quarterly or maybe right before tax season. They would get the entire year caught up and they're just looking at it like, well, we need these numbers for taxes. So they're not thinking of it from a like managerial perspective of what you need to be looking at on a daily or weekly basis. So anyway, that's how our two pieces work together.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure a lot of the financial folks listening completely sympathize and they're thinking about their clients and what it might be like to work with like a roofer or, a lawn care company owner or something like that, thinking like, yeah, okay. Something you mentioned from the top is that you, yeah, of course, have background in this field, but then you've worked with this company for about a year and then you bought the company or there was some kind of acquisition agreement within there. A lot of folks might be listening thinking like, as owners already, but they might know of someone who is at some point going to need to sell their business and thinking like, well, how do I even buy a business? Like, how does that work? How do I approach that conversation? I would love to hear just kind of how that worked out for you.
So first, I love buying businesses and it's not my personality type to start a business, right? Like for a long time, I wanted to be a business owner, but I felt like I needed to start one. And I was like, I don't know what I would want to start, right? So 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I'd actually bought a coffee shop. So that was my first acquisition. And then I bought another one about a year or two later. So I kind of got like my feet wet with acquisitions several years ago, right? And that's when I was like, it clicked for me. I'm like, oh, I need to buy businesses. I don't need to go through the whole like startup phase, right? Like I can go in, figure out, do I have something that I can improve in what's already happening and go from there. So I did those two acquisitions. Like I said, they were like 2019 and 2021, I feel like. And then just this past year, like you just mentioned, so I bought formerly Mills Knows Bills. So we rebranded into MKB because I am not Mills. And so we did that. And I added on another bookkeeping firm at the same time. So it was like, if we're going big, we might as well go big and just do it all together. Yeah. So 2 acquisitions was that last year? Yeah. Last 2025.
Awesome. And so did Mills approach you about that or did you approach her? How did that work?
This is such a funny story because I thought I was in trouble. She sent me a text one day and she was like, "Can we talk?"
Because you worked for her. So when you get a message,
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh no." I was like, "A client's not happy or she's not happy, like something is going." And I don't know, maybe that's just like an anxiety thing with me. I was like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And so we hopped on a call and I'm like, I'm like rapidly trying to go through all my clients. And I'm like, is there something that I've done wrong? Did I miss something? Like, what happened? She's very like friendly. But like in the moment, she was just kind of like sitting there, just like, okay, like letting me ramble. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting myself into something. Anyway, we got to it. And then she was like, so I want to sell Mills Most Bills. And I was like, that is not the direction that I thought this phone call was going to go in, right? And so basically she wanted to talk to me first to see if I was interested in buying it. Her and I had been friends for quite a few years prior to that. So, we knew each other pretty well. And yeah, so she approached me. I mean, instantly I knew it was a yes. I was just like, it makes sense. It's what I'm already doing. And I love owning businesses. So take the leap. So
I guarantee you some people think like, I mean, don't you need like millions of dollars just sitting there to buy a business? Like, how do you do this? So would you kind of take us behind the scenes, give us some hints, whether it be the coffee shop or Mills No Bills?
yes, of course. So like the coffee shops, and this is where I feel like putting it out into the universe in whatever way that you think, like sometimes things just fall into your lap, right? So the coffee shops, I was at a CFO for another company and we went to one of our vendors to just have like a conversation, and offhandedly he was like, "Do you know anybody that wants to buy a coffee shop?" And I'd never even ordered a latte everywhere. Like I was not a coffee drinker. And instantly I was just like, I want to buy a coffee shop. So I was just kind of like being in that right time at the right place. And that one, my husband was working at it. So we did a 401k loan, and it was a relatively cheap purchase. So we were able to basically float that one with cash. And then the second one, they messaged my coffee shop's Facebook page and was like, "We're wanting to sell. Would you be interested in buying?" And so again, that one was cheap enough that it was like just like the little add-on. And so that's how I ended up with that one. Like the bookkeeping firm, obviously Mills asked me, we were already working together, but that's the only one where I've been like actively already working for the company. But I think if you just kind of like let people know that you're interested in buying businesses, you'll have no, like the deals will come to you and then you make the decision on whether it's the right fit or not. But with Mills, we did kind of I did a down payment and then owner financing. So we did like a 2.5 year deal for owner financing. And so we just cash flow the payment there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's the biggest thing is that a lot of folks maybe don't realize that the owner might be willing to finance it, and that you could probably do something with minimal loans and maybe a period where you're working for the business and improving it and using that profit to pay the owner.
Exactly. There's, SBA loans, which do generally require a down payment, but you might be able to talk, like maybe if they'll do seller financing for a portion of it and then you get the SBA loan for the other, you may not have to have any money down. But you can also like if you're buying a business and it's a fairly stable investment, which it's a business, so who knows? But like if it's something that's been around for a long time, you have experience running at least like at a somewhat high level, being in a business and understanding how it works. I mean, you could do like home equity loans or personal loans.
Quick pause here because you host a podcast for your business, so this matters. Most podcast hosts judge their success by downloads or whether someone hires them directly from their show. But that's not how podcasting actually works. Your show is building authority, warming leads, improving visibility, and creating opportunities long before a sales conversation happens. The problem is, most business owners don't track any of that. So they get frustrated and assume the podcast isn't working because they haven't gotten a client directly from an episode. I created the podcast ROI Metrics Tracker to fix that. It's a free tool that helps you track 50 plus non-traditional metrics so that you can finally see the real return your podcasting is doing for your business. You can grab it right now at podcastabundance.com/ROI-tracker. All right, back to the episode.
Depending on the type of business, sometimes you can get like 0% interest finance credit cards. And because it's expensive when you first take over a business, I will say that, like, aside from just the purchase price, there's just a lot of things that go into it. There's insurance, and you may have to float payroll for a few weeks, rent, like all of those things that, depending on the type of business it is, you'll need some upfront cost covered. So it's simply not just like, here's the purchase price and you're good. Like, generally you have expenses that you have to take care of before there's money rolling in, but plan for that. But there's lots of creative ways to buy a business.
I mean, I'm sure that you're looking at detailed reports and you kind of knew whether it was a good purchase or not, whether it's a profitable company or not. And if not, you could probably see something that was improvable almost immediately that you could make a better situation out of.
This is one of the tips that I always give to people that are wanting to buy a business is, if you are looking at something and you can't think of at least 3 ways to improve it, like within the first 90 days, then that business better be making a lot of money so that like you can just step in and not have to change anything, and it can pay you whatever you want or whatever it should be paying you. Or if you're going to buy it, like if it's kind of like teetering on that, like, well, it's either profitable or it could be profitable very soon, like you need to have a list of like, bam, 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 these are what we're going to do to change things. And, from there, like, for instance, the coffee shop, I'll use this as an example. Basically, the first 2 things that I did, which worked out really well because I bought it in October of 2019, and we all know what happened in March of 2020. But I put app ordering in. Like, they didn't have any way to order ahead of time, and they did not have a drive-through. So we had app ordering, like literally week 1, I installed that. And then their marketing was pretty lacking. Like, they didn't ever post on socials. So we just did like daily posting. We need to get into the community. And so those were 2 things I was like, day 1, I can change those. And it made a big difference in our business.
That's awesome. I know, obviously coffee shops and CFO businesses are a little bit different, but you were purchasing a CFO business that already had a host of a podcast, a face of the business, a YouTube channel. Like, it was no secret that Mills was the face of it. And so in a transition, that could be awkward, or you could, take some time, introduce the new CFO to, or the new CEO to the audience, and transition the social media, rebrand, all of the above. And that's what you did. So would you mind taking us behind the scenes of that rebranding and introduction process as the new CEO?
Yes, of course. Okay, so it was like literally almost exactly a year ago. It was the beginning of March 2025 when she asked me if I wanted to buy it. And I think within a week, we had everything kind of finalized, like what was going to happen. So we picked June 1st as the date, and we were like, okay, is that 2.5 months to basically start this transition before the transition actually happens. So like you mentioned, like the business was literally named after her. So there is a transition that has to happen because all of the marketing up until that point had been her and her face. It was her email list. It was all her networking contacts. Like everything was what she had built. And she did an awesome job at it. But it made it so that we definitely needed to transition, right? So we started bringing me into the content. So we were kind of doing an alternate, like if she had a reel, then I had a reel or a YouTube video or whatever it might be. So we were starting to transition me in. So people were getting used to seeing my face. And then what we did with the podcast was I think she took basically a hiatus with it. Is that right? Or maybe she already had things recorded, but her style of podcast, they were short. They were like 5 to 10 minute episodes. She did 2 episodes with each guest. So one was like her asking them questions, and then the next was them asking her questions. But they were very like short, poignant questions, right? Like, let's get to the meat and potatoes, which was her style. Like, she is very just direct and to the point and can get it done in like 30 seconds. And I, as you can probably tell, I'm not that way. I'm like, I'm going to tell you the full backstory on everything that you need. So we decided to rename the podcast. So it went from Mills Knows Bills podcast, I think, to The Financial Operator. We switched to an hour long ish episode where we're just interviewing business owners. And that's definitely more my style. Like, I want to have a conversation with them. I want to get to know how did they get to where they're at? Kind of like this, right? Like, where you're just kind of talking and getting to know the person. We'll figure out kind of the things that they did in their business that went wrong, what went right. How do you help other people avoid any mistakes? And it was just more my style, but we had to do a total rebrand. And then we rebranded the company as well. So we went from Mills Knows Bills to MKB. And that way it still has like a piece of her with it, but new logo, all of that to go with it. So it does feel more like mine now. And it's not just like the ghost of Mills hanging on, which can happen, right? If you're in a business, when you buy one, both sides, I've always been shocked at like when you sell a business, you think that you are going to want to hold on to that for like, it's going to be hard to give up. It's actually very easy. Like if you remove yourself, it's actually very clean cut, even if you've spent your life dedicated to it. And then on the other hand, like the new owner coming in wants to feel like it's their business and not like they're just filling in for the previous owner. So I feel like clean cut ties and, a rebrand is generally a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you started introducing, this new face slowly but surely, but increasing in frequency as you get towards the transition, you've announced that there will be a transition. I think if you position it as, we're really excited that the business is taking this next step and we're going to rebrand and we're going to have new colors and it's like this reveal. And, there's a lot that you can do on social and in your content that your audience or your potential clients and existing clients can really get excited about. And so then when it's the actual transition, it's not this like, oh, who's this new owner lady? But it's more of, oh, cool, look what they did, And something I'm noticing is the buffalo on the wall behind you in the logo. I was curious about that, but then now that I see your frame, I see it there. But there's, some cool ways that you can do this transition well and bring your audience with you so that they're just as excited about it as you are.
Yeah. And you don't have to like fit a like square peg into a round hole kind of thing. Like make it work for you. Like the podcast thing, like if I had tried to continue to do the podcast like she did it, first of all, I would have been miserable. Like I don't like doing that. But it also wouldn't have been good, right? Like it would have just been me trying to force it. And that's never good. So like make the changes that you need to make so that the business works for you and not the other way around.
especially when you're thinking about podcasting. It's your face, it's your voice. Your approach might be slightly different, even though you did work for her. But then now that it's yours, there might be a different direction you want to take it in, or just some little nuance that might be different. So, what were your thoughts around, that interview style shift, as far as like your own positioning and attracting your ideal client using the podcast?
So she was doing very like short and direct questions. And that was her style across basically all of the social media platforms. Very like short and concise. This is something where like the podcast, I love podcasting and I love talking to people. So it was a very natural thing for me to be like, no, we're changing this immediately. Like I want that to fit me. But it's also something that's like we're trying to bleed into the other social platforms too, to make it so that it's not so educational forward, which is great. And we still have all of those resources because they're on our pages and they're things that we can refer back to. But like bringing more personality into it, bringing more of my personality into it, and like not erasing what she already did, but making it so that it's like, more enjoyable for myself to do. Um, so there's been lots of little like transitions that we've done, tweaking in like any time in business, right? Like this isn't just a thing where you're like acquiring a business and we need to figure it out. Like you're always kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't. And I still feel like we're doing that with the podcast, is trying to figure out what pieces of this do we like? What do we need to improve? What did we do really quick because I just needed to step in? And like one like intros and outros, I think I'm like, we still need to do those better because I have not really like taken the time to do those. But I think podcasting is such a fun way to meet new people, new referrals, and build your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you nailed it. There is a certain amount of things that you have to do just quickly because of a deadline or because it just needs to get produced. And if not, we're going to sit on it for 6 months. So might as well just get it out there. And I love that kind of go for it mentality. As long as you're able to, like, I don't know, put it in a sauna and set a deadline for out in the future so that you don't forget to do that thing. Sometimes that ends up happening with cover art or the show notes to the episode. They aren't like exactly SEO friendly. We haven't thought about, okay, what are the ideal keywords that our business needs to make sure is in for our podcast so that we're attracting the right people. Like there's so many nuances to creating content, especially in the podcasting space. So, what were some of those things besides the intro and outro that you feel like?
Probably all those things that you just named.
Okay.
I feel like we did really well with like getting guests and like getting the podcast episodes recorded, but there is definitely lots of room for improvement on all of those like outside things, right? But what I love about podcasting though is that all of those things are like editable. You can take an old episode and re-edit it, or, post new show notes or whatever it may be and make it better. And it's still just like lasting there forever. You can direct people back to it. That's what I love about podcasting. It's just such easy is not the right word, but it's such a like it's such an evergreen platform that you can make tweaks to. You can improve it as you go, as you make new intros, or like how easy is it to like, okay, we have a new lead magnet. I want to put this on every podcast episode we've ever done. Like, not that that's easy, but it's doable. And it's something that we can just constantly be improving. Whereas, like, if you post a YouTube video, you can't do that. You can't go back and edit that specific YouTube video without it just kind of like restarting the whole algorithm of it.
And maybe folks don't realize this, but that is one of the challenges of transitioning into this like video podcasting space is that we can replace an MP3 inside like a podcast host account, like a Buzzsprout or Podbean or Libsyn, without triggering any kind of like repost or renumbering of your old episodes. However, on YouTube, our sole opportunity for updates on an existing YouTube video is title, description, the recommended video, like end screen pieces that are at the very end. We cannot edit that video. Once it's posted, it is essentially permanent, or you can completely remove it from the platform, which there are all kinds of pop-ups and warnings making sure that you actually want to delete this video when you're doing that. So you're right. I mean, that is kind of the beautiful piece of podcasting. And I would say on some clients that do have edits like that, that's what we do. We'll go in and we'll edit show notes, titles, descriptions, whether it's on YouTube or podcast episodes, but then in the audio piece, whatever edits we can do, we can replace that file, add a mid-roll, do whatever. And then we kind of just let the YouTube videos live, there could be a disclaimer put in the description or something like that. But yeah, you nailed it. Did you have any challenges as far as becoming the new host? I'm not sure if you'd hosted a podcast before. What was that like?
Yeah. So I'd actually had a podcast like back in 2019, 2020, and it was prior to any of the video podcasting, right? So I was generally doing it in person. I had I don't even know what it was called. I had my little recorder box thing with all of the microphones plugged into it, and I would go record in person, or I would maybe do like a Zoom, but there was no video, which is not that long ago. It's crazy how things change really quickly. But so I had that, and I was doing all of my editing myself, but it was audio only. So I learned a lot of new skills. And that's where I figured out that I really enjoyed podcasting. And then I had a little one that I had like a local one where I was interviewing like our local business when I had the coffee shop. I was using that as like my community equity piece, right? Like I'm promoting other businesses that were local to me. And anyway, so I do enjoy podcasting, obviously. That was probably the piece that I was like most looking forward to, just getting another podcast and just I just love the way that it like connects you with people, because you get to have really in-depth, like you get to go past all of the small talk, right? Like I just met you, but now we're having a really in-depth conversation. And I really loved that piece because it just kind of forces you into just like, okay, well, we're not going to sit here and talk about the weather for 20 minutes. Like, what can we talk about that makes a difference? And I just really enjoy it.
I agree that I feel like it fits my personality as well. Like, it's not that I don't care or something like that, but I don't need to know all of your personal life to decide if we're going to be business besties, essentially. Right? Like we could talk business all day, and that's like what I get excited about and everything. And I don't necessarily need to know where you went to college or what you did in high school or family or whatever. So, I agree. I thrive in the deeper conversations where potentially I'm learning something, but I also feel like I'm, you know, producing something that a lot of people can learn from. And I know that's the goal for your business as well. You mentioned something about transitioning from education only content. Talk to me about that from a financial firm owner's perspective.
Well, let's be real. Like, it gets boring listening to somebody just like talk at you and tell you all of these different things, right? Like, there's just, and not that the information isn't valuable, it is, but it needs to be done in a way that's more, I would say, like storytelling is, way better at teaching people what it is that you want them to know rather than being like, here are the 3 things that you need to do for tax time. Like, yes, that's helpful. But personality wise and whether they actually like you and want to work with you, they don't care. Like, they're going to assume that if you are an accountant or a CPA, like whatever it is, that you know those 3 things that you should do for tax time. So, I think it's people like to work with people that they like, right? So, like, make sure that it's something that's putting your personality out there and letting people even get a little peek at who you are and how you operate. I think that just attracts people to you.
Yeah. To me, I feel like that's the piece that video does really well that may not always come through via audio. They can definitely hear, listeners can probably hear whether I'm smiling or not when I'm talking or whether I'm kind of bored, right? You're just gonna hear it in my tone. But what they won't hear is when I'm smiling and nodding at you because I really agree with something that you're saying or I identify with it or I did that or whatever, right? So that's the piece that I think video does is show, your eye contact, your facial expressions. And to me, at least, I feel like I can know someone or feel closer to them when I see them on video versus only hearing their voice. Hearing their voice, it's going to take me I don't know how many episodes to feel like I know them, but the learning curve or adoption curve or whatever is so much faster with video.
Putting a face to a voice makes so much more of an impact than just listening to somebody talk. There's certainly, if I'm in the car, I can listen to podcasts all day, but something about watching a YouTube video or a podcast or people interacting with each other, like you just said, you get to know the person so much better, even if it's, fake knowing them.
You think you know them.
Exactly.
They don't know who you are.
Exactly.
You mentioned something about lead magnets a while ago, and this is definitely a must-have strategy for business owners with a podcast because you can talk at folks all day long, but if you never offer them something in exchange for their email address, we all know how hard it is to build an email list and a potential client list. And this is one way that it's so much easier, better, faster. The folks who like what you're saying jump in, and the folks who don't or are not ready, you don't get their information. And so it's kind of a natural filter for us.
And what's the worst thing? Like if you give people a lot of information and then they have to go Google what you just said and then they find somebody else, right? Like nobody wants that.
Really good point. Really good point. I hadn't thought about that angle in a long time. I know you have a couple of calculators and downloadable options on the site. Was there any particular strategy with creating those? Did they already exist from MKB? Like, how did that work out? And were you like, okay, we have to mention these in every episode? Or how have you thought about your lead magnets with podcasting?
You've probably brought up a great point that I need to focus on them more. But we just redid our website and it went live like a week ago. So I'm glad that you were able to see it all.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It has some really cool calculators on it, like you mentioned, and those were somewhat jointly created. So Mills had a budget template that's on there, and then there's a cash flow template that's on there. And those may seem like the same thing, but they are not. If you are somebody that's like, I don't even know what my bills are every month, like the budget is what you need, right? Like we need to just get everything on paper, digital, like whatever it is, so that you know what it is you're paying for every month. And so the budget helps with that as well as building in some things for like taxes and all of that. And then the cash flow template is really like looking forward, like, okay, you know what you need each month. So let's break that down into like a 13-week template. Like when am I going to run out of money based on what I already have? And so those are the two things and kind of how they work together. I should probably be talking about those in every episode. So thank you for the reminder. Or at
I
least
wasn't
linking
trying
them
to
in the
do a
show notes.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely curious about,
Well, it's
you
funny because I
know,
usually talk about those when I'm on other people's podcasts, but then I don't think about it when
mm,
it's on my own. So
okay.
I should definitely be using that more.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm happy to highlight that for you, but I was not trying to do like any kind of gotcha, like trick
No, but I
questions.
appreciate it.
With that in mind, is there any other way that you've approached the podcast where you're like, okay, this is going to create ROI for the business in this particular way, even if it's not like someone calls up and says, hey, I heard your podcast. I'm ready for CFO services. What else are you seeing with the podcast, or perhaps are your goals with the show?
The podcast to me has been a really great way to build relationships with referral partners that are harder to do outside of that. Like if you're just, you meet somebody at like a networking event, you might exchange cards and they might be a good referral source, but like they don't know you, right? So like we were just talking about, the podcast allows you to really just like dive in and understand each other and see if you're even like compatible on a business level, right? And so it's funny, like one of the probably most rewarding interviews that I've done lately was with somebody that does the exact same thing that I do, like to a T, right? Like same client, same services, like all of the same offerings. But we both knew like there are so many home service businesses out there. Like we are not really competing in the grand scheme of things. But also like whatever little piece that he offers that I don't, like I can now refer that to, like I have a resource for my clients, and same for him, right? And if one of us gets in an instance where like, oh, well, I have too much work, do you want to take on a new client? Like we can actually work together in different ways where we're offering better services to our clients. But it's one of those things that like it seems counterintuitive. Like, why would I want to bring on somebody? Like, what if my guests like him more than me? But that, if they do, then that's the right fit for them. And then instead of just like trying to kind of like hold everything really tightly, it's just there's enough work for everyone.
That is a great reminder and a great perspective because, yeah, I think in general, hosts avoid bringing on someone who's just like them, right? And does even remotely, like let's say we have a different ideal client profile, but we do the same thing for those different ideal clients, folks will avoid that interview or that guest. So it's a really good reminder that, hey, maybe say yes to the interview and approach it from this collaborative referral partner perspective. But yeah, and I agree. Like sometimes it's really tough to find the right referral partners.
Mm-hmm. And you can also meet people that you're like, oh, I thought they would be a good referral partner and I do not want to work with them. So it's a good way to weed them out too.
Yeah, it's a good filter.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I want to just encourage everyone to go check out your show, listen in, especially if they, as a financial service provider themselves, they probably know some home provider folks. Your show is probably ideal for those listeners. So give us a few links and places where we can find and follow you. Where are you most active on social media?
Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, probably the three places that you can find us, which I know is a lot. And they all kind of offer different things. The YouTube obviously is going to be the longer content. The Financial Operator podcast is on every platform I think that you can find a podcast on. But other than that, like our website is mkbcfo.com. You can find those calculators on it. Shoot me an email. I also love talking to people. Like if you don't know how to read a P&L, or if you don't know what things are important to look at, like book a call with me too. Like I will tell you for free, like what it is that you should be looking at. And then if you want to buy services after that, you're welcome to, but there's no expectation to, I just want everybody to make money.
Well, and for reference, even the YouTube channel is MKB CFO for those listening.
I think that's basically our name on everything, MKB CFO.
Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun. I love talking about podcasting, obviously.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Podcasting for Financial Professionals. Before you go, make sure you're actually measuring what your podcast is producing. Not by vibes, not by download spikes, but by the actual outcomes it's creating. Authority, visibility, and leads for your business. Your podcast is doing more than you think. You just need a way to see it. That's why I created the Podcast ROI Metrics Tracker, a free tool that helps you track the real return your podcasting for business is creating. From authority and visibility to leads and opportunities across many categories. Download it right now at podcastabundance.com/ROI-tracker.